Hi, I wanted to talk a little bit today about the notion of self-sabotage, what can be called the turning point, and then some ideas to help you navigate that time. Self-sabotage and the turning point are something that happens with every single person that I've worked with who is on some sort of healing path, whether it be physical, emotional, psychological, spiritual. And what it is you decide to start making changes, you start enacting those changes, and you get like a glimpse of what your life will then become if you stick with those changes. And then this part of you rears up and freaks out. That freak out can cause the moment of self-sabotage, which sets you back, or what would be called the turning point, which is that glimpse moment where you're turning the corner, so to speak, and you have the choice to keep continuing on the path that you're on and leave those old ways that are no longer serving you and keeping you stuck behind, or where you can just return to the old ways. Now, some people in certain circles would call this sort of like an ego response or ego backlash. But I've recently had a change in how I think about this part that comes up. This part that comes up, we may call it the ego, but I really believe that it's more like this very young, scared part of ourselves who needs the strength of our maturity and presence and love, caring, compassion, grace, and wisdom to step forward and speak with this part and interact with this part that is so scared to leave what it's always known and help it realize that it doesn't need to be so afraid, or that if it is afraid, it's okay because you, the adult, you, the wise part of you, have got this. And if we operate from this standpoint or from this perspective, this part of us is not this bad ego that needs to be put in its place or let it have its freak out and then it'll go away again. It's just going to keep coming back over and over and over again. And each time it comes back, it's going to be bigger and bigger and bigger. And I feel that if we can work with this part, if you can work with this part, if I can work with this part and say, what is it that's happening? What are you so afraid of? What evidence do you need to prove that these fears that you're experiencing are not maybe real, but they're not completely real? And here's the evidence showing that the things that we're doing to make these changes are the right things. For example, a lot of times working with clients, because I'm so food focused, is I get clients that want to make a lot of big changes and then they go all in for a couple of weeks and then they have this moment where they freak out and they just throw it all away and then feel like they're this massive failure for having this freak out where they just like essentially fall off the wagon. And what it is it's just that you're seeing, oh my gosh, this is what my life needs to be for now. And I'm terrified that my life needs to be this way, that I need to eat this way, that these foods that I was eating were not helping me get better. They were in fact making me sick. And I don't know that I'm emotionally ready to be giving up those things yet. And I'm afraid of what may happen if I give up those things. Who will I be if I'm not existing in this cycle, in this pattern, in this container. Because when we step out of the container of which we've been living, it becomes very scary because it is freedom. And the opposite of freedom in a lot of ways is operating from a place of fear. And so this self-sabotage turning point moment, if we do not come to it from a place of deep wisdom and compassion, we can respond in fear and then retreat backwards into the old ways. So if we can bear that in mind and say, I don't need to respond from this place, and talk to this very afraid part of ourselves that we often label as bad or misbehaving, or ego, then we can talk to it like a small child and say, no, let me show you. This is, you're right about these things, but these, like, you have to convince this part of yourself, but these things that we're changing now are doing us so much more good than the way that we were doing things before. And it's part of being human. So everybody experiences it in some way. And, a personal example, just because this happened yesterday, it's been very hot and humid here in New York. And I've been very bloated, with water weight, and really craving all the things that would make the water weight for me worse. So that, for me, that's stuff like the vegan ice cream, because I don't eat cow dairy or animal dairy, and it's eating really sugary foods, and it's eating really salty foods. So it's all the stuff that's going to make you retain water and make me essentially more tired in a way. You feel better in the moment, but in the long run you feel worse. And I was so good all day, relatively speaking, compared to what was happening internally with all these cravings, that I ate well for dinner and I was feeling really good, and I got on the phone with a friend, and then all of a sudden this part of me was like, let's have a glass of wine, which is not something that I usually ever do, especially not by myself, or if I'm on the phone with someone. Usually I'll have seltzer or a cup of tea or just a plain glass of water. And then I went and I had the glass of wine, and sure enough, I felt awful. And I was like, I don't know why I'm drinking this wine. And it was that part of me that was like, yes, we kept the damp pattern going, which is why sometimes I call these parts that come up almost like little gremlins that want to keep you going in the not helpful energetic pattern. And it's just because they don't know any other way of being, and they get upset when they feel ignored. So if you can work with these parts and say, no, this is not going to serve us, and this is why, and what else can I give you to satisfy you, then that usually helps quiet these parts down and helps appease them. And it's not appeasing as in a be quiet, be patient, go sit in the corner and wait, or you have your temper tantrum and I'm just going to ignore you. It's not in that way, but there's an engagement and inner dialogue happening, which is very different from what you're taught when you're meditating. And so if you we all have human moments. I slept well and I woke up today and I feel a little bit better, but it's still very humid out, so I'm still a little sluggish. But this happens with everybody. It mostly happens when you have a really big shift to make, like when I started my big journey with my food stuff for my Hashimoto's. I was told to not have any gluten, dairy, white sugar, any flour of any kind, including gluten-free flour. no coffee, no alcohol. I mean, it was like everything was taken out, and no raw food. So, so it was very hard because I did so well up that first month, up until 2 days before I met with my practitioner. And then I went out and I ate pizza and calzone, when I had not had anything like that for like 28 days after having dairy like every day prior to that. And prior to being told I couldn't have it anymore. And I did this thing where I said, oh, well, I haven't had it the whole rest of the time, so what's the big deal? And it took me years before I realized like what the big deal was. It's because the big deal is breaking the pattern. And if we keep going back to that same way of like returning to the things that are not helpful to us, then we just stay stuck in these patterns. So what can we do if we are in these patterns and we're aware that we're trying to break patterns and we're consciously trying to break these patterns, right? We're doing the work and we're still running into these things. With food, my big thing is bitters, and I am like Miss Bitters right now, and I completely forgot that I could have taken some bitters last night, and it most likely would have made me feel a lot better. But did I remember to take them? No, because I'm human, and that's what happens. So with food or food things, you can incorporate bitters with your meals because the bitters will help retrain your taste buds. And the bitter receptors are not only in just in your mouth and tongue, they're in your throat, they're in your stomach, they're in your intestines, they're in your lungs, they're like even, I think some in like your brain. I mean, these bitter receptors are all over your body because the bitters are part of the fire element in Chinese medicine, which rules your circulation system. So basically anywhere your circulatory system goes, the bitters will go. So if you have these very strong food things going on, bitters can help you reset with more ease, but you still have to show up and make the right choices for your particular health picture, right? If your thing is you're self-sabotaging with exercise, like you're so good for a couple weeks, then maybe it's time to look at what your goals are, and if you're asking too much of yourself and you're going too hard too fast, and you can kind of step it back. If it's just getting motivated to get going anyway to begin with, then it's make the choice to put on your workout clothes in the morning. If you're working from home or like on the weekend, put on your workout clothes, get your sneakers on, and see what happens if you start the day that way. Maybe you can fit in 5 minutes here and there. You don't have to do it all at once. I will even do my own strength training in between tasks during the workday. So I have like TheraBands and like hand weights and things like that, and I'll do squats and so on and so forth, like just to move a little bit for like 5 or 10 minutes in the middle of the day. And that you don't need to be in your sneakers for. You can be in your bare feet. You can be in whatever clothes to do that, essentially. So it makes things, just keep everything out and accessible. Out of sight, out of mind, right? So keep it in sight so that you're reminded to do it. And if you're meeting a lot of resistance to doing it, you can say, how about I just start with this one thing? What if I just did this one thing every other day and set a reminder on your phone to do that? If your thing is using relaxant substances to help you unwind at the end of the day, and I'm talking about alcohol and marijuana products, both of those are very hard on the liver, which is why over time you become essentially dependent on them to help you relax, because they kind of like, they give you the relief in the moment, but then in the long term they actually cause more problems with the liver. And this is from an energetic standpoint with concerning the marijuana products. And I don't really know a lot about what the research is on like CBD and THC, those extracts, but from what I've been observing in people, the same applies. So if you're reaching towards substances, like common substances like that to help you relax, and you notice that it's not helping you in the long run, your options are to incorporate herbs like skullcap and passion flower, lemon balm, into your routine. When you would normally have that substance, you could then try a strong cup of that tea, or have like a tincture blend where you would like make your have some of the tincture instead. And you can get blends with skullcap and passion flower in them. Just go and read the boxes on like all like the relaxing, stress ease, etc. teas, like from like traditional medicinals and yogi tea and all the other ones that are out there, and just try some different teas and see what it does for you. And if it's you're noticing benefits but you want to do more, that's when you get in touch with someone who can put a custom blend for you together for you, right? If your problem is overworking and not giving yourself time to relax, setting a calendar appointment, set up in your calendar as an appointment with yourself to spend 20 minutes doing something that you love every day. And that 20-something minutes could be laying down and closing your eyes, and if you're someone like me, you pet your cat, or you could sit and read a book. You could make yourself a really yummy cup of like specialty, or a really nice cup of coffee if you drink coffee, and sit down and just really spend that 20 minutes being very present with yourself, that you're doing this for yourself, to give yourself this time. You could spend that time journaling, you could spend that time listening to music, so on and so forth, just to like say, I am worth taking the time to spend loving time with myself. Because that's what this is about, showing yourself the love that you want and deserve and are worth in your life. So if you're overworking and you're not giving yourself that time, you're going to have to schedule it in, and it's going to feel uncomfortable and weird and strange for a while, and you will probably have a lot of, I don't have time for this, but set aside 20 minutes. And if you don't want to set aside 20 minutes, then set aside 10 minutes. I'm sure you've got 10 minutes, because I'm sure if you tally up all of your tasks and things minute by minute, especially if you don't have like a million children running around, then I'm sure you can find those few minutes to give yourself that helps you feel in connection with you, because it's ultimately what all of this work is about. Getting you back to you so that you can thrive and really love and enjoy this life that we have, and not be constantly putting out fires or ignoring parts of ourselves and our lives that are no longer working for us, where we could just say, that's not working for me anymore. What would be a better solution or a better option for me? And then you act on that. And you act on it from a place of, I'm worthy. And I love myself. And because I love myself and I know I'm worthy, I can make a choice that is in my best interest. So that's what this is about. And that's what the self-sabotage is ultimately doing, is trying to keep you in the cycle of like this sort of self-punishment cycle in a way, right? So it's trying to keep you from like staying disconnected. And if you work with a depth psychology based practitioner, then you will be able to touch on that young part of yourself that actually had to do that in order to survive. And it's really profound and moving, but it takes time to access, and you can be aware of it starting today and really work with those parts of you that are afraid to leave the container that the only container that they've known. And if you work with those parts as if they were, just scared little children, how would you comfort that child and show that child that child doesn't need to be afraid anymore in a way that's not dismissive? then you can really make a lot of progress with the self-sabotage. And of course, because we're human, we will still have those moments where, you know, we do the thing that we know that we shouldn't be doing. I do it plenty. But then when those happen, we have a lot more grace and humor about it than in the past. There's no more shame. There's no more guilt, and there's no more what I like to call self-flagellation or the self-punishment, wherein we just think that we're bad for failing to be perfect, because we're not perfect. We are perfect, but we are also still human, and we have these things that we do because we're human, and that's what we've been taught. And that's my thing for you to maybe think about this upcoming weeks until I do another video. And again, great herbs to consider are, bitters blends, skullcap, passion flower, lemon balm, anything to just kind of soothe. Chamomile would be great, and rose would be really lovely, especially if part of your makeup is having trouble saying, no, I need this for myself. Rose would be a really, really nice option, especially if you do the flower and the leaf with some of the thorns, to help you have that like little bit of, building space around yourself so you can really bloom. And then another option that I really like if you have trouble really speaking up for your needs is an herb called potentilla. It grows wild in fields. It's a really lovely herb. I use it in combination with other herbs. I don't use it as a simple or as a single herb, but it is something that you can look into, and I think it's available as a homeopathic. So you could take it as a homeopathic and see how that works out. I've been getting more into homeopathics lately, in addition to the flower essences and herbs. So I think I'll be mentioning some homeopathics along the way as well. So those are my recommendations for you to check out. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this was helpful for you. If you have any questions or would like additional assistance or comments to make, please feel free to email me or comment in the post linked below. And I also wanted to let you know that the Make Your Own Bitters class is now available as a self-study class with step-by-step videos and instructions for you to just do it at your own pace. So if you go to the site, click on the classes option, and the Make Your Own Bitters registration page is right at the very top. I will have some other classes that I hope to release before the end of the year, and you can see little notes on what is upcoming. So please check it out. There are some other new things on the site if you're interested, so feel free. It's my invitation to you to do with that as you will. And I just really appreciate you being here and watching and listening and reading what I have to share. I hope it's been valuable to you, and I hope that you'll be able to apply it in your life so that you can be making the changes and growing in the ways that you want to be growing. Have a good one. Bye.